The planet Earth is a mysterious place. One of the most challenging things up till today is to discover its different secrets. Science managed to study Earth, its different landscapes and creatures, and has reached the highest point on Earth, which is the Everest mountain. However, going into the oceans and seas was a little bit more challenging. Many managed to climb the Everest mountain, but only a few managed to dive into the deepest point in the ocean. Making this video was a little bit hard since I am terrified of deep waters. Viewing the different images and videos you're going to see in this video is so uncomfortable. So with that said, enjoy the video and don't forget to like and subscribe. Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth ever discovered by humans. To give you an idea on how deep it is, if Mount Everest were hypothetically placed into the trench at this point, its peak would still be underwater by more than 2 kilometers. Terrifying. The Mariana Trench was first discovered during the 4 years Challenger expedition from 1872 to 1876. The technique used back then to measure the depth of the ocean were weighted ropes attached to a big iron anchor. For every 225 kilometers traveled, the crew on the ship would throw the anchor attached to a rope into the water and let it dive inside. Once the anchor hit the ground, they would pull it out in order to measure the depth of the ocean beneath them using the measuring marks on the rope. In 1875, when the Challenger ship reached the western of the Pacific Ocean, about 124 miles east of the Mariana Island, they threw the weighted rope, which unlike the previous times, did not stop. It kept going into the water for several minutes until it recorded more than 8,000 meters depth. Panic and excitement was felt on the ship. The crew knew that it was a historical moment they're witnessing, and that they might have discovered the deepest oceanic place on Earth. In 1877, a map called Depth Map of the Great Ocean was published by Peterman, showing the Challenger Deep at the location of that sounding. Right after that, questions concerning the nature of this trench started to pour. What is the actual size of this trench? What kind of creatures could possibly live there? Would they be normal creatures like we know them, or terrifying giant monsters who adapted to the darkness and depth of that point? Unfortunately, at that time, technology simply was not advanced to allow answering any of these questions. The Challenger expedition paved the way for the modern ocean expeditions and gave the first glimpse to different horizons that were far from scientists' wildest imagination up till that time. First, with the different landscapes that could also exist in the deep oceans, and second, with the possible creatures that could possibly live under. It was not until 75 years later that these answers would start to be answered. In 1951, the Challenger 2 expedition surveyed the trench using an echo-sounding technique, a much more precise way to measure depth than the drag lines and ropes used during the original expedition. During this survey, the Challenger recorded the deepest part of the trench to 10,000 meters, which means 2,000 meters deeper than the recording of Challenger 1. The place was named Challenger Deep in honor of the original expedition discovering it. One of the questions that remained was, what are the types and kinds of creatures and species that would survive in the deepest place of Earth? And how did they adapt to the darkness and pressure there? In 1957, the Soviet vessel called Vityaz reported the existence of a large amount of species at 7,000 meters below the surface of water. Different types of bacteria, invertebrates, and weird fish were recorded, and they were all called sea monsters. Scientists were not satisfied with these results and wanted to dive even deeper and unravel the secrets of Mariana Trench. But it was easier said than done. Different factors such as low temperature, darkness, and pressure prevented the scientists from diving. For your information, pressure could reach 1,000 times the pressure on top of the Everest mountain. The year 1960 was a turning point in ocean expeditions. The first human finally managed to dive the Mariana Trench. Don Walsh, along with Jack Pickard, dove on board of a submarine designed specifically to resist the high pressure of Mariana Trench. After diving for 5 hours, the submarine reached the depth of 11 kilometers. The two scientists stayed for only 20 minutes, but they were enough to discover that marine life existed there. They recorded weird new species, including huge amphipods known as supergiants. Most of the filmed species were big in size, which was called deep-sea gigantism. It is the tendency for species of invertebrates and other deep-sea swelling animals to be larger than their shallow water relatives. Proposed explanation for this gigantism include colder water temperature, food scarcity, reduced predation pressure, and increased dissolved oxygen concentration in the deep sea. Many years after that expedition, the diaries of Jack Pickard reveal that when they were underwater, a strange rounded-like creature kept following their submarine and moving around it, but a few minutes later, the creature disappeared without a trace. Some suggested the existence of underwater civilization we still haven't discovered, something like Aquaman. The following expedition took place in 1985 when an American expedition was sent to study Mariana Trench. The sea orbiter used during the expedition, once it reached the deepest point in Mariana Trench, started to vibrate, and it was being attacked by a strange force. At the same time, scary, weird sounds were being recorded. The crew finally managed to pull out the sea orbiter to the surface, but to their surprise, the orbiter has bite marks all over. The size of the bite marks was nothing like seen before. The bite marks were so big and so clear that biologists believe that the bite marks could only be caused by a megalodon. A megalodon is one of the biggest extinct sharks to ever exist. It could be as big as 22 meters and 45 tons. To give you an idea on how big it is, just look at the size of a 7-floor building. Scary. This theory did not come out of nowhere. In fact, a giant tooth the size of an adult hand was found, and after studies, it was discovered to belong to no other than the megalodon. Biologists then claimed the theory of the existence of the megalodon to this day, but it only exists in deep seas. Whether you believe the existence of megalodon or not, marine life exists in the Mariana Trench. This was confirmed by the Japanese expedition Kaiko, which recorded more than 300 types of species in the Mariana Trench. The second human to ever dive into the Mariana Trench was James Cameron. Yes, the Canadian film director. In 2012, he managed to reach the bottom of Mariana Trench in the submersible vessel called Deep Sea Challenger, diving in depth of 10,908 meters. This dive confirmed the existence of diverse life in the sunless, cold, deep sea. The tragic thing discovered also is plastic. Yes, plastic. Human pollution has reached the deepest point in the ocean, which means that the undiscovered species that could exist there are threatened and could disappear before we even manage to discover them. Oceans cover more than 70% of the Earth, with an average depth of 3.7 kilometers, and light can only penetrate as deep as 100 meters, while the rest of underwater remains sunless. We can say that since most of the planet Earth is covered by water, it means that most of the Earth exists in total darkness.